Hello, welcome to the introduction video for Examine Human Use of California Grasslands. This first activity we're looking at primary sources and evidence for ecosystem change. The activity we'll be working on today is in your weekly work, and it looks like this. Introduction video response questions. So hopefully we'll get this done in less than 9 minutes. Let's get started. Examine human use of the grasslands, ecosystem change over time. Student goals. So you need to write down at least one of the student goals. And in this, we're hoping to provide examples of how variables can lead to changes in ecosystems. We're hoping to categorize the effects of ecosystems as a short-term or long-term or not determined. We're hoping that students will be able to catalog the factors that influence the scope, scale, and duration of these effects on an ecosystem. We're hoping that students will be able to determine if these variables have a cumulative, collective effect, and or a synergistic effect on ecosystems. And we'll talk about synergism today. It's basically a collective effect on the ecosystem. So please write one of these down for your goals. Ecosystems change over time. Change in climate will cause a change in organisms living in that environment. So the question I'm trying to answer is, list 3 causes of ecosystem change in the last 6.5 billion years. And here are 3 causes. In the last 6.5 billion years of existence of the Earth, ecosystems have changed due to movements in the plates. The plate that we live on now, which is the North American plate, has moved and is still moving to the north. And so ecosystems has changed as the plates have moved from maybe a more middle place on the Earth, where they were located near the equator, and moving more north to the poles, or where they're moving it from the poles down to the equator. Changes in cloud cover. There was an impact, a meteor impact about 60 million years ago, which caused the dinosaurs possibly to die, and that caused a lot of dust to go in the air, and that changed cloud cover. Right now we are undergoing climate change, which is possibly warming up the Earth, and as the Earth warms, there is more evaporation of water, and as there's more evaporation of water, there is more moisture in the air, causing more cloud cover. Changes in the tilt of the Earth. The Earth actually is wobbling, and because it wobbles, the tilt of the Earth slightly changes from 23 degrees off its axis to maybe 24, which causes us to point more or away from the sun depending on what type of year it is. So these things can cause a slight change in the climate, which will affect the ecosystems. Please make sure you write one of these down. Human activities affect ecosystems. How long have humans been occupying the land we call California? So humans also can affect ecosystem. As I was saying, we do have this natural cloud cover effects due to maybe a meteor impact. Well, humans are changing the environment due to activities we are doing, and they have been changing the environment ever since they've interacted. Anthropologists believe humans have been in California for 10,000 to 15,000 years. The activities that these humans did, particularly in the past 250 years, have caused changes to the California natural regions. We've made fires. We've brought in invasive species, which have changed the grasslands from what they used to look like, which was this California bunch grass, to non-native grasses. And that's what they look like now. Because of cattling, or raising cattle and sheep, other grasses were introduced through feed, and then the cattle would poop out the seeds that were in the feed, and the grasses then had a quicker growth rate, and so they quickly took over the land or the area that it was growing on, and went from looking like this to looking more like this. So humans have impacted the ecosystems that they have lived on. California Indians use fire to change grasslands and ecosystems. There's two reasons why California Indians use controlled burning of grasslands. One reason was controlled burns were used to favor the growth of plants that they wanted and provided the Indians with staple foods and various products for their material culture. So they would burn burn the land so other plants would be pushed out or pushed away, and then they would plant the ones that they wanted. And that's what they would do, and it was more or less a controlled burn, you could say. Recycling rich mineral ash and biomass improved growth of favorable plants. So they would do this, and then as the unwanted plants were burned, of course that material would go back into the soil, which would enrich the soil. This also helped by clearing the underbrush from fallen limbs. So if there was another fire, it wouldn't be as bad. And also, it would help clear away the area for hunting, so there wouldn't be as many places for them to hide, or they'd be able to walk in the areas easier and hunt. And improve travel by reducing brambles and underbrush and thickets. So the Indians would do these burns to do these three things. Consequences of this, though, was reduced natural ecological succession of the environment. So succession means the environment slowly changes from one thing to another. And because the Indians would burn the ecosystem or burn the areas, they would keep it from going from a grassland to a woodland over time, because they were taking out the plants that would eventually succeed into, like small trees and brush. In the last 250 years, the ecosystems in California have changed drastically. In the last 250 years, what activities cause drastic changes to California's grasslands? So we're going to write down at least one of these. Well, one of the big things was the arrival of Europeans in California in the mid-1500s, initiated an era of great change. Although, remember that the California Indians were changing the environment and the ecosystems before this by burning. Prior to California being a state, before 1850, Spanish and Mexican land grants to ranchers started to change in the types of grasses that composed the California grasslands, which we've already mentioned. So cattle were brought in, and the grasslands changed from California bunch grass to more native grasses that you see in this picture here. This is the more native grasses. New plants were introduced to ecosystems. Annual bluegrass, palm trees were introduced, which are not native to California. A weed called vetch, which is very pretty, and it's like a pea. It's a family of the pea family, and it grows as a vine, grows very quickly over other plants. And the plant that we've talked about before, the water hyacinth, which is very pretty, but can quickly grow in the waters. So in the last 250 years, what activities have caused drastic change? Well, we have farming, we have bringing in of other plants to plant. Human activities can have cumulative effects on an ecosystem. Describe what a synergistic effect on an ecosystem is. So in this case, we're going to talk about that. So any individual activity can have a minor consequence, but taken collectively together, these acts become significant over a period of time. The effects on an oil spill on a beach ecosystem is bad. But if you combine that with the effects of habitat loss due to beach property housing, so if we have housing and then we have an oil spill on top of that, that can drastically affect a specific organism on that property or in that ecosystem, because they're being hit by two different things. If we add a third thing, the effects of overharvesting of a marine species, say clams. And then we have housing properties, which are limiting their environment. And then we have an oil spill. That is what we call a synergistic effect. Taken together, these activities significantly alter an ecosystem and affect the chances of long-term survival of organisms living in that affected beach ecosystem. That's called synergy. So that is what a synergistic effect is. And we have humans, or it doesn't have to be humans either, but when we have humans coming to an area and there are numerous pressures on that ecosystem, it enhances the chance that certain organisms will not survive because there's a synergistic effect on them. Well, how is the climate change and water hyacinth affecting the delta? So, will a warmer climate encourage water hyacinths to grow? So, as the climate increases or the temperature increases, will water hyacinth grow better? Or will a warmer climate hinder the growth of water hyacinth? So, we will look at this as we move through this unit today. That concludes this video. If you have any further questions, please see your science teacher.